And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
Folks, and welcome to the Lowdown. My name is Elson Low, your host. Thank you for joining us this Saturday night. We like to always say you start your Saturday on a high with Elson Low. The first thing you can do for us, though, folks, we'd appreciate it, is if you would share that link. Share the link, folks. Let's try and spread as much as possible the show. Let's give everyone the opportunity to watch the show. Because we're gonna have a fun time. We try to keep it light here on the Lowdown, and we try to ensure that we're, as much as we're informative, we make things funny and interesting. So please go ahead and share that link. Share it as widely as you can. Let's try and get some people in. Let's try and spread as much as possible the show. And we're gonna have some fun tonight. Tonight we're going to be looking at a couple of things. The first is we're going to be talking a bit about Teodoro Obiang, who is the vice president of Equatorial Guinea, the son of the president there, who is a very famous international figure, a man of real style and class, but who also has extensive corruption allegations against him, and how that's relevant again. We'll have a chat about that. Great style and class. We're also going to meet with Riaz Rupnarain, who is a Central Executive Committee member for the PNCR. So he'll be happy to come on and share with you guys a few of his thoughts. But also, we like to keep it light. We'll have a laugh. And then we're going to talk a bit about housing in Guyana and how young people can position themselves, what they should keep in mind. Because obviously we've seen very high prices for housing, and this will be a rolling series, so I'll speak about this some more. In the past few weeks, we've been talking about resumes, the corporate work environment, and what we should anticipate in terms of the jobs that will be generated in the oil and gas industry and how you can get those jobs, networking, and so on. So if you're interested in that, you can check out previous broadcasts. Folks, share the link, share the link. Let's try and spread things as widely as we can. Let's give everyone an opportunity to have a look at the show, to have a good time with us tonight. And, we're going to have some interesting points. And hopefully you'll learn a bit just as much as you have a laugh. So from that perspective, let's lean into some of the early things. We like to start off the show with some memes, the memes of the week that I think indicate how things are going in Guyana. Unfortunately, how they're going. Last time we spoke, someone that had told me on that day that things is not nice at all. And indeed, viewers, things is not nice at all, because we've got very high cost of living. We've got very high inflation, a real spike in prices. And unfortunately, as a result of that, it's very difficult for the average consumer in Guyana. Things is not nice at all. And so we're going to chat a bit about that. And in the course of it, you'll get a sense of where the government is going wrong, what needs to be done to adjust, both from a short and really a longer term perspective, because there's a lot that we have to keep in mind. Oil is a funny thing. It's something that I try to say often, because it is, you can get better or you can actually get worse, which perhaps surprises some people. So if we can get our first photo up there, we'll give viewers a look at our first chart. And so that chart, look at that skyscraper. Look at that chart. It's headed to the moon. That is the price of wheat. Obviously, we've got a conflict in Ukraine and in Russia there that has caused a substantial disruption to the international wheat markets. It's caused a lot of disruption, and as a result of that, a huge, really sharp spike up in the cost of flour. Unbelievably sharp. 40% is what we're hearing, and we've seen flour go up by 15% already, according to Namilco. But it would appear that it's going to have to go up even further than that 15%, because we're hearing that they're going to have to raise prices again. So really tough for local Guyanese, really tough for everyone living in the country as these prices go up. But unlike many other countries, fortunately, we're producing oil. And so as a result of producing oil, we are benefiting from some of the higher prices. Higher oil prices, certainly we're benefiting from. And yeah, to give you viewers a perspective, when the estimates for Guyana's GDP growth were put out earlier in the year, the end of last year, we're looking at a $74 a barrel price for oil. I can assure you, oil is not at $74 a barrel now. But I think that if you were buying anything at the pump, if you're fueling up your vehicles, you're fully aware that oil prices have spiked up. And so we're hearing that Namilco is going to have to raise its price on flour because of fuel prices that have involved, whether that's in transportation or production. So we're already starting off here with a perfect example of how things is not nice at all. And as a result of these things not being nice at all, we have to ask whether the only $5 billion that was put aside for the $552 billion budget that we've passed for this year was enough. That's 0.9%, not even a percent for you viewers that are curious about that. And in fact, we've spent 4 more times on infrastructure and capital investments, really, than on cost of living, despite these spectacular skyscrapers that are reaching for the sky in a way we haven't seen in forever. So let's jump on to the next picture. You know, like I said, we keep it light but a laugh. So the next shot here, we've got someone, it would appear, you know, borrowing the palm tree from the front yard of someone else. I don't know if they're going to bring this palm tree back, having collected the palm tree. You can kind of see him just in front of the gate, grabbing the palm tree out of the ground. You know, I guess he really likes palm trees. He wants to borrow it, take a good look at it. And someone in the comments saying that you know, it's funny that anything that associated with palm trees, they say, oh, it's the coalition. So that's just a hilarious example, I think, of how things is not nice at all. And of course, someone is commenting that can't even leave the palm trees alone. If we could get the next picture there. So here we've got one where someone is saying, talking about the price of garlic. Apparently, the price of garlic has gone through the roof. That's another area where we've seen a huge spike in cost of living. This is things that ordinary people use to cook, you know, your everyday foods, and the price is through the roof. So people are, again, highly concerned about the price of garlic. Let's get the next shot up there. Here we've got a shot about an apartment, I believe it's in South, that's 1,500 US to rent for a 2-bedroom, you know, 300,000 Guyana dollars. And obviously that is creating some alarm. We'll talk a bit more about this at towards the latter half of the show, just to give Guyanese a sense of what's going on in terms of these really high prices for real estate and for rent, especially in the Georgetown area. Now, you know, for context, $1,500 for a 2-bedroom is more than when I was in the States. I was paying for a 2-bedroom. So that should give you some perspective. I think it's substantially more than I was even paying when I was in the States. So that is, I think, a very interesting development. But we'll help you to understand this, help you to get a perspective on it. But of course, it's created some serious sticker shock, as well it should. All right, so we'll get on to the rest of the show a little bit later. For now, we'll chat a bit about, you know, some other issues, give you some perspective, frame, I think, the discussion, because it's easy to get a bit lost when we look at the rapid development of Guyana. It's easy to get a bit lost, but we want to always give you viewers some perspective, and from that perspective, you can form your own opinions and get a sense of the direction the country is going and the difference between the policies promoted by the PNCR and the coalition and the PPP's policies. So we're just helping you to understand what's going on. So just looking at poverty in Guyana, which is something we don't talk enough about, and where we try to get more measures. The last survey was all the way back in 2006. And that showed that about a third of the population, 36%, was living in poverty. And 18.6% were living in extreme poverty. Now, this can be defined by people working for less than $2 a day or $1 a day or $5.50 a day. It depends on your measure, but even by all of those measures, that's what we call in Guyana punishment. So very difficult circumstances. And according to the IDB, the poverty rate in Guyana in 2017 was as high as 41%. And that's for people who are making less than $5.50. And the IDB has also indicated that poverty disproportionately affects those that are not on the coast. And unfortunately, that they live in, greater than 50% of people not on the coast live in this level of poverty. So it's very concerning. But something that I stumbled across recently, which I thought was very interesting, is that obviously Guyana is growing, but Guyana's per capita GDP, which is your per person income, it's essentially the total income of the country divided by the number of people. So just a general measure of the amount of income per person that you should see in the country. That actually has surpassed China's. So Guyana now has a per person income that is higher than China's. Isn't that interesting? Even when you look at purchasing power, so how far your dollar goes, if you look at that estimate, Guyana is again still past China. And so that level is 19,000 US. If you look at it at a purchasing power level, that's the per capita income, whereas China is only about 18,000 US. So, some would say, we're making a lot of progress. We're past China, and China's been growing quickly for a long period of time. So how is it that it feels like things is not nice at all? How is it that this is the case? Well, that really is a question of governance and how the country is being run, isn't it? Because as much as things is not nice, we just saw the largest budget in the country's history pass. In fact, this budget was around 4 to 5% larger than the previous budget, which was itself the largest budget in the country's history. So how is it that things is not nice? Could it be that where the money was spent was not spent in areas that will provide immediate relief, assist people during this difficult time, and ensure that we have the level of equitable distribution of income balance in the society that we want? Perhaps. So that, when I looked at that, one of the things that I think came up, or at least kind of jumped to my head, is that it reminds me of something else. It reminds me of when I was looking at Equatorial Guinea, which is a country in Africa, which has also is an oil producer, similar in size to Guyana, and produces a similar amount of oil. Of course, I'll get into all of that. Now, when I looked at that country, it definitely first of all, there's similarities, but the key similarity is that in Equatorial Guinea, the per capita income is about 22,000 US per year. So we're starting to look very similar to these comparisons I was talking about with Guyana. However, Equatorial Guinea has about 70% of the population living in poverty. Now, we just saw that Guyana has in excess of 40% of the population, in some areas in excess of 50% of the population living in poverty. So again, a similarity. Let's put up a quick map of Equatorial Guinea there. I think we should see a map there of that country, just to give our viewers a perspective, thanks to our operator. So there we go. We've got Equatorial Guinea. It comprises a mainland section as well as an island offshore. And there's substantial oil and gas production offshore, just as there is in Guyana. And of course, we've got Exxon and several other large multinational corporations in Equatorial Guinea. So I just want to give you a quick understanding, a quick reading of what's going on there. So I'll just read a little bit from an article I came across online, and you can Google these types of things for yourself and learn a bit about this interesting country. Incidentally, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the country that our good friend Teodoro Obiang is from, the man who is very stylish and classy. But we'll come to that in a second. So Equatorial Guinea has the highest level of per capita income in sub-Saharan Africa at $22,300 per year. In 2005, Equatorial Guinea was the largest producer of oil in sub-Saharan Africa at 376,000 barrels of oil per day, which is very similar to Guyana's total that we're currently producing. profiting roughly 5 billion per year. We'll be looking to get to those levels shortly. The country has dumped massive funds into infrastructure, rebuilding airports and roads while improving water and electricity services. As a nation, it has very low debt, fertile soil, and a small population of roughly 900,000. So very similar to Guyana. On the surface, it would seem that Equatorial Guinea is a booming country, rich in resources and high in potential. Again, this sounds very much like the way that people describe Guyana. However, it's unfortunately much bleaker than that. According to the World Bank, 76, so in excess of 70% of the population lives in poverty. Now, how could this be? How could a country that's producing oil, that has such a high per capita income, be doing so poorly in terms of poverty? That's crazy. And that's something that we, in the PNCR, what we're focused on is a people-centered approach, because we want to avoid these types of situations where your numbers look good, but on the ground, things are very difficult. And it would seem to me, I don't know about you, but it would seem to me that that is exactly what we're seeing in Guyana. Exactly what we're seeing in Guyana. The numbers look good. Guyana is likely to beat its 50% estimate for the growth of the country by some distance. However, things is not nice at all. So next we'll take a look at the next picture there as we roll along. So again, it's a country with a high degree of poverty. It's a country that people have talked a lot about. And one of the fun facts about Equatorial Guinea is that after they actually got oil, measures of governance such as people's welfare, various measures, actually showed that things got worse, not better. So as I mentioned, oil is a funny thing that doesn't always have obvious results and obvious outcomes. If we can get the next picture in. All right, so there we got him. Teodoro Obiang, man of great style and class. Look at that suit. It's beautiful, well cut. Love the sunglasses. It seems like he's stepping out of a Bentley. This guy is living the lifestyle. He's loving it. That's a great perm, or at least I think it's a perm. Very neat, looking good. Let's get another picture of him up. Like I said, a man of great style. Look at that jacket. Look at that tie. This guy clearly has style. He knows what's up. He's well traveled. He's had great fun experiences. Here's an interesting story. He makes 100,000 US a year as his salary as vice president. However, he has purchased several $100 million of property and sports cars. So let's take a look at some of these things and kind of peel back a bit. This interesting figure who has great style and taste. So Dutch authorities seized the 120 million US luxury yacht. 120 million US luxury yacht. Isn't that unbelievable? It's interesting to me that he would have been able to afford an 100,000 US salary, a yacht of such magnitude. I believe the name of the yacht is the Ebony Ice. It's a very, very nice name. I wonder if there's diamonds encrusting anything in there. So Mr. Obiang is living it up, enjoying life, going hard. Let's get the next picture up as we go along. Yes, cars. This guy has more cars than Bond, though of course he claims that those are government vehicles because the government officers need to drive in style. So these are some cars that were seized by French authorities. Again, that Mr. Obiang has been linked to. Essentially, these vehicles, are incredibly pricey, and the question is why a government and even government officials would need such vehicles. Let's remember, keep in mind, folks, that we're talking about a country with a poverty rate in excess of 70%. And, they're out here buying sports cars and, buying 120 million US yachts. Very interesting. Okay, so let's take the picture down there. So the reason that I bring this up is that what Equatorial Guinea spends a lot on, and we mentioned it earlier, is infrastructure. A lot on infrastructure, not a lot on people. Billions and billions on infrastructure. Does this, again, sound familiar to you? And of course, you hear international organizations say infrastructure is the way to go. And of course, I agree, several things are very important, and we need to have the right infrastructure. However, one key thing to understand about oil economies and how these economies tend to work is that infrastructure is an incredibly efficient way to engage in procurement fraud to enrich the leadership of a country. And so in Equatorial Guinea, you'll find that on islands that don't have any people, you'll see schools and airports and roads, and you'll see extensive highways being built, even though people might not have cars. And you'll see all these projects being done, but the real purpose of the projects, if you understand it, if you think about it, what's the purpose of building a school on an island if the island is uninhabited? The purpose of the school is perhaps, to engage in procurement fraud. That could be the purpose of the school. And so that is something that has been extensively documented in Equatorial Guinea, and there's been a lot of questions that have been raised about that. And if let's say you're going to increase the price of these infrastructure projects by say 120 million US, then just like that, you could find yourself with a 120 million US yacht. And so that would perhaps explain why Equatorial Guinea, despite having an incredibly high per capita GDP, per person GDP, it's very, very high, we see such a high poverty rate. So let's look back again at Guyana, where we've got poverty in excess of 40 or 50% across the population, where we're seeing a lot of infrastructure spending, 4 to 4 times more on capital spending, that's infrastructure and so on, than on cost of living spending. Where we're seeing that, again, things is not nice. Does this raise some concerns for you? And I'll remind you, Equatorial Guinea has about the same number of people and produces almost the same amount of oil. The similarities are eerie. All that we're left to see is some of these cars pop up. So we'll keep an eye out, viewers. But I thought that you might find that to be interesting, entertaining, and funny. Now, on the flip side, the PNCR has come out with some policies such as looking at a livable income, looking at salary top-ups, which we will implement in order to help people who are working across the population to benefit from what we think or what we will calculate and so on will be a good wage, a good standard income that citizens can be at a decent level and not be under the poverty line, not be living in the circumstances that you see in Equatorial Guinea. So from that perspective, we've developed a lot of these programs, and essentially this salary top-up is something that's recommended by many economists. So we're going to play a little video for you now. We're going to play a little video that should give you an idea of where this idea came from. It actually came from a right-wing economist. So as much as I know that some folks will look to label this as, giving away money, these left-wing folks don't know what they're doing, I would describe that as factually incorrect. And so let's see the video and we'll have a chat afterwards.
The proposal for a negative income tax is a proposal to help poor people by giving them money, which is what they need, rather than as now, by requiring them to come before a governmental official, detail all their assets and their liabilities, and be told that you may spend X dollars on rent, Y dollars on food, etc., and then be given a handout. The idea of the negative income tax is to treat people who are poor in the same way as we treat people who are rich. The virtue of an income tax arrangement is precisely that it treats everybody the same way. There's none of this unfortunate discrimination among people. You have a system which stimulates abuse. It seems to me, experience suggests that our present welfare programs are clearly very much subject to this danger. Look at what's been happening. In a period of unprecedented prosperity and affluence, the number of people on the welfare rolls has been skyrocketing. Why? Because once they get on, we make it almost impossible for them to get off. In order for somebody who gets on to get off, he or she has to be able to have a really good job, because to earn a little bit, get off gradually, now doesn't pay. Under a negative income tax, you would have give the poor people a possibility of getting off gradually. For a great large fraction of the people who are being helped, they have every incentive to do it themselves. If we give them the money, we will strengthen their responsibility.
Great. So we've got a quick video there. One of the things that jumped out at me is in a period of great prosperity, some people seem to be having difficulties. Now, the idea really, and a negative income tax is the broad name for policies where you would give people some money on top of their salary. So again, this salary top up is that as you work, you'll be able to earn more than you are right at your job because the government is providing you that additional amount, gives you an incentive, extra incentive to work, and helps to support you in your everyday living expenses and in helping you to make progress. And as was pointed out in the video, it's broad. It's not based off of a particular individual's race or location or the party they support. Everyone would be automatically entitled to such a salary top up once you fall within the salary range. And of course, we're looking primarily at lower income people to be able to benefit from this. There's been allegations of the government cash grants not being given out equitably, fairly, efficiently by the government, and as a result, a lot of people have gotten turned off by these things. Now, we are talking about a broad policy that benefits all Guyanese, not just a particular group, and not a policy that can be skewed to benefit a particular group. It is a policy for all Guyanese, and that's the direction that we should go. Of course, we need to combat poverty. Of course, we need progress in our country. Of course, we're driving towards this better Guyana, and we shouldn't allow big numbers such as a high growth rate to disguise big numbers such as a per capita GDP that's very high to disguise the fact that ordinary people are suffering. Ordinary people are in a difficult position, and we got to try to do something to help them out. And in fact, in the process of doing something to help them out, we can ensure that that they have a further incentive to go out and get a job. Of course, if you're going to get a salary top up, you have to have a job, so it gives you an extra reason to go out and find a job. And once you do get a job, you'll be living at a level with your income that is reasonable and that allows you to have a good and prosperous experience in our great country. And so that's one of the things that we're proposing. There'll be other proposals that I'll go through that all are part of this livable income package, and that are really a means of distributing, some of these benefits from the oil and gas industry across the economy. It is, I think, really important for us to understand that the structure of Guyana's economy is such, because of the oil and gas industry, that the benefits, the huge revenues, are greatly concentrated in the government, greatly concentrated in the government's take of these revenues. But the costs, inflation, higher prices for housing, higher prices at the pump, higher food prices, these costs are distributed across the entire economy. And so it is the government's job to find the right balance to ensure that people who are especially vulnerable because they don't have high income already are not put in an even worse position by higher prices. And that is what is going on today. That is what is going on. Things is not nice. We started off this program with a graph where the price of flour was through the roof. It looked like a skyscraper. And we're talking about policies now and in the future that will help. The PNCR and its coalition partner, the AFC, and other partners have called for a focus on things like flour and other things like cooking oil and so on, and that are staples that everyone needs in order to eat in this country. And so the $5 billion that's been put aside for cost of living, that's where that money should go. It'll help the most in the areas with the biggest spikes in prices. And so that's what we've called for, ensuring that those prices are stable, so that ordinary people don't suffer from a really difficult situation, which is what we're in right now. And just to draw a line under this, viewers, just to remind you, let's think about if Guyana had never found oil, if we didn't have oil. We'd be under tremendous pressure. How in the world are we going to respond to this crisis in exactly the same way as we would have responded without oil? Now that we have a prosperous country with revenues coming in, the country moving forward at tremendous speed, we have to have a different and better response. This idea that, you know, a few dollars here and there is enough is a pre-oil Guyana kind of idea. I think we got to reset. We got to take a step back and we got to ask ourselves if we're satisfied with punishment. Let's be real, there's punishment out there. You know, the cost of garlic to the roof, the cost of flour to the roof, the cost of cooking oil. Are we satisfied with that in a country that's growing at this unbelievable rate where we just went past China in terms of per capita GDP? I don't think we should be satisfied with that. And I don't think that you think that either, viewer. So now we're going to hop across. Again, we like to keep things light. I know this is a kind of a heavy topic. We're going to try to keep it light. We have a guest who's going to come on, Riaz Rupnarai. If he's available, he'll jump on and we'll have a nice quick chat. All right, Riaz,
What's up? Yeah, hear me?
Good having you on. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Good. So we first of all, congrats on becoming part of the CEC, the Central Exec Committee of the PNCR. You know, I'm trying to have a chat with various members of the leadership. Let's have a laugh, see how things you know, have a lighter discussion. And from that perspective, I think it'd be great for everyone to get to know you a little bit more. So I just wanted to start off by asking you, you know, where are you from? Where did you grow up in Guyana? So you can give people a little bit of perspective, you know, just as to your background.
All right. Yeah, I've been born and bred here for all my life, for 3 decades and a little bit. I grew up in Pomeroon in Region 2. I did all of my lower studies there, my nursery, my primary, my secondary, even I attended Teachers College right there in Essequibo. It was then in the latter part that I migrated to Georgetown to pursue my bachelor's, my master's, and now my doctorate.
Good,
but I'm originally
well,
from Essequibo, and I still visit.
Great. You know, you're firing a lot of qualifications across the table there. So I don't know if you want to give viewers a bit of a better idea of those.
Oh, okay. Well, I hold certificates in supervisory management and sociology from the University of Guyana, project management from the University of Cyprus and African States. I have my teacher's training certificate from CPC, a bachelor's in international relations from University of Guyana, a Master of Arts in Education Leadership from University of Bedfordshire in England, and I'm presently doing my doctorate in Education Leadership from UNICAF as well.
Nice. Well, it's good to see that you've been looking to make the use of a lot of opportunities, looking to keep learning.
Yeah. I mean,
keep learning
the online.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're as a person who's been in the education sector and as a person who is continuously working with young people and training them, it's going to be quite hypocritical to push young people to motivate, mobilize, and build themselves, and then you yourself is stagnant. I'm not saying that there is not a point of your life that you will eventually stop, but education is something that you never stop seeking, and even though it's not a bachelor's and it's not a master's that you may want to pursue, you still involve yourselves in some training, some certificate. There's some that you can always make yourself better in, because even though I've been doing a lot of training itself, there are a lot of seminars that I myself go and sit down and say, because there's something that you're going to hear in a different perspective from somebody else, no matter their age group or no matter their qualification, because in this, it is a changing world. I'm listening to you just now. You're saying that these things are coming about. And two of the things we have to remember is, one, for those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, and we see it's actually becoming prevalent right now in society. And as Darwin said, if we do not adapt to changes in society, then we will become extinct. So we always have to try to build ourselves, motivate, and seek knowledge as we go forward.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a growth process, and the world grows, so we grow along with the world. We keep things rolling on, and even if I think maybe people aren't going to do further education, I think that doesn't mean that you're not going to keep learning, keep trying to expand your horizons, and keep looking to, you know, have that curiosity, which I think is so vital. So now we're gonna
Yeah,
have a quick fire round that we typically do, just to give viewers a sense of a bit more about you. And so I'll just ask you a few quick questions, and you can
sure.
just tell me what your thoughts are. So the first is, would you prefer the seawall or the creek?
The creek.
Creek. Nice. That might be because you grew up in Region 2, so you got an affinity for creeks
And
and lakes.
I'm an avid swimmer, so I can't say no to water.
Nice. Here's a funny one. Umbrella or hat?
Hot, definitely hot. I don't like umbrella.
All right, there we go. Uh, black cake or fruit cake?
Black, without a doubt.
All right, it's
Everybody who
Christmas
knows
time.
me, no, I didn't get that one.
Christmas time.
And even out of Christmas, anybody, the first question I ask everybody is if they know anybody who makes the black cake. This year long,
I,
I try to get as much as I can to eat it.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Coconut water or Moby?
Oh, coconut water. I don't like Moby. I don't like the bark.
Ooh. Controversial statements coming out here.
Well, they're all subjective, yes.
Yeah. All right. Next one is, do you prefer to lift weights or to jog when you exercise?
Jog.
Cardio or okay,
Yeah, I
cardio.
like to run. Gym
Good.
is too much too demanding, and I can't promise those hours and those commitment. I'm not so disciplined as yet.
Yeah. I also prefer to jog myself. Maybe do push-ups as
Yeah.
well. All right, and the last one in this quick fire round, boots or dress shoes?
Oh, dress shoes.
Dress shoes. All right. Viewers, you've got the inside scoop here. You know a little bit more about Riaz here. Raz, before we go, we want to ask you a question. That we always try to ask folks, which is, if
Sure.
you had named something that you're really looking forward to in Guyana's future. What are you looking forward to the most in Guyana's future? What maybe you're optimistic about in Guyana's future? You can give viewers your perspective on that.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things. There are a plethora of things that can come to my mind. Well, I'm gonna list one, the most unrealistic one, because and that is the
Dream
one. I
big.
mean, we are a democratic country, but I hope that one day we can actually fulfill that word, because one of the key points of democracy is that our three arms of government must operate separately, but at the same time work cohesively for the Guyanese people. But they work separately to ensure that each other are kept intact and in line. But that doesn't really go on right about now. It has not gone on for many years. So I hope that one day we can actually have where executive arm does not infiltrate our legislative, neither our judicial arm as well. So when we have a decision coming, and I mean, especially when it comes to our judicial arms, I'm sometimes very disappointed, not really disappointed, but embarrassed to see that some of our cases have to reach the CCG, and then a foreigner has to decide the state or the affair of our Guyanese people, just because of some biasness that was done within the Guyanese judicial system. So,
Well,
and then
respect for the judiciary is pretty vital, so we want to emphasize that. But I completely agree in terms of us wanting to have a country with the three arms.
And one thing I admire within the judiciary too is the role that the women play within our judiciary system. I've admired the role when you look at our senior judges and justices, and so you see the quantity of women, and it's really, really encouraging. And when you think about it, you wouldn't have expected this like about 40 years ago. You wouldn't have believed that women would have actually been holding these kind of senior position. And it's when in the classroom we work, it really gives young girls, real motivation to push themselves, because now we've seen a lot of females have pushed themselves to join the law field, which we have known over the years to be predominantly controlled by men. So I must say that although I am optimistic that certain things will happen, I am glad to see that certain things that have happened that we would not have expected it to happen.
Yeah,
and these women in our judicial system are are exemplary role models to our young girls.
Yeah, yeah,
One of the
I
other
think
things I look
that's
for,
great. Sure.
yeah, one of the other things I look forward to is the role that, I mean, most times when you go to youth conferences and youth, anything to do with young people, we sometimes encourage them to make their contributions and so forth, but we write down on a piece of paper and very limited do we see it put into action. Ultimately, they're just used as a focus group. So I do hope that one day that we have, I mean, there are two sides to that coin because a lot of people will say that young people are quite irrational and they sometimes make decisions based of emotion and so forth. So when you ask them certain things, they give it subjective. They will say, you know, they're like whole and little malice, like they just fret me, let us stay right there. They don't look at it necessarily the bigger picture. But I hope that one day we have a little bit more active role of young people playing within these same three arms of government, the executive, the legislative, and judicial. And I know we
Yeah,
do, at presently,
yeah,
we do have young
absolutely.
people right now inside of it, but hopefully one day we see a more larger proportion in the seating arrangement and more so a better response to their voices and so on. They're not taken as lightly as they should be taken because some of them I've listened to some of the young people make their presentation and all three arms of government, both you see some young MPs, you see some young ministers, you see some young judges, and so they're really it shows you that there's hope for our Guyanese people. So I am optimistic and
Yeah.
hoping one day we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, for joining us tonight. It's been
It's
a
my
good,
pleasure, my
interesting
pleasure. Thank you for
insight.
having me. Thank you for
You
having
know,
me.
yeah, yeah, and we'll bring you back down the road.
Yes, Elson, you take care. Have a good one.
Okay, so that was Riaz Rupnarayan, a member of the Central Executive Committee of the PNCR. Here again for a light chat. We keep it light here on Saturday night. We're trying to get to know people and have a good optimistic chat about the direction that the country can be taken and that we're working to put the country in. So now as the show rolls on, we're getting to the latter stages of the show here. We're gonna talk a bit about, the issue of housing in Guyana and how young people can look at it. It's of course one that is of great concern because, as we indicated right at the beginning of the show, you're seeing places in South for 300,000 two bedrooms. People are concerned. If you're working at one of these, at a place that's you're making probably 80,000 a month. There's no way that you can afford $150,000 rent. So that immediately prices you out to the market, puts you way out, and that's not what we want at all. We want everyone to be able to access good housing, good affordable housing, not only a few elite individuals. So it's something I think a lot of people are concerned about. On the flip side, the value of property in Guyana would, by virtue of these increases in rent that you can receive, would go up very substantially. So we've seen a very substantial increase in real estate prices. And in fact, we heard from, I think, the head of the Private City Commission recently say that rent in Georgetown had tripled in the last few years, in the last like 4 years probably. So that, again, is incredibly concerning if you're a renter, but very good, of course, if you have a place to rent. And so this is, I think, kind of framing the discussion, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to frame the discussion in a way to give you a sense of how you can position yourself. Of course, I'm not saying to invest in X, Y, or Z, but I think you can keep an eye out, and that will help you to understand what's going on. And if you want to benefit, you'll be able to figure out a way to benefit. So we're seeing these really high rents. We're seeing this sharp increase. Tripling is no joke when it comes to an increase, right? We're looking at 40% increase for flour. Just imagine tripling. So the question then becomes, why are housing prices rising in Guyana, and especially those in Georgetown? Because I believe that's what he was referring to. Why are those prices so much higher in Georgetown? Now, this is largely due to the oil and gas industry, where workers who are in a productive industry where they can earn high salaries, companies may pay accommodation, will be looking to get houses that are centrally located or locate close to where they can access or travel to the oil, offshore, the FPSOs, the production vessels, or engage in other support activities for that industry. So in order for them to do that, they would need to live nearby to those industries. So Georgetown being the central hub, that's where you're seeing a lot of these companies and individuals rent properties. Now, of course, they're going to rent at a higher rate because they can earn more, but also because this is a limited area, it's going to push up the rent in that area. So that's, I think, why we're seeing a lot of these high prices. The other half of it is that we sometimes forget, because it's been a while since we talked too much about it, that there's a crisis in Venezuela, excuse me, and that we saw a very substantial migration from Venezuela to Guyana as a result of this. As many as 20 or 30,000 people would have moved over. I'll give you one funny point. The government has promised 50,000 house lots, but if 30,000 people move to Guyana, maybe 40,000, then you can see how that seems to me to be a totally irrelevant promise, and that it sounds like they haven't done a proper, from the government, an assessment of what the housing needs really are. So that's an interesting one. Housing will be swallowed up immediately by large migration. But the point being, we understand that some Venezuelans will come over because of the difficult circumstances. We have to adjust. We have to ensure the country is able to move forward, and we have to do the appropriate adjustment. Now, what this means for you as someone who's looking to rent or renting is that there's a lot more people in the country who are looking to rent. And so if there's more people looking to rent, that'll drive the price up. And so there you go. That increases your rent costs again. So those are a couple of the factors that have been playing a big role, and unfortunately will probably continue to play a big role in the price of housing in Guyana. Now, the other thing that you can ask yourself is, well, how will I benefit from this? How could I benefit from this? Well, obviously, if you already have a property that can be rented, you'd rent it. Or if you maybe have a room that you could rent, you rent out the room. You provide that service. If it's separate from the house, I suppose that's perfect, really. But you should, or you could look to rent out in order to benefit from a higher rent price. I think that's very understandable. But also, you should perhaps keep an eye out for areas of your house that you could rent out. Whether something could serve as a place to rent. That's something you should keep an eye out so that you can really seize this opportunity. The benefits will be greatest. I think it's obvious so far in the Georgetown area. But of course, this is coming off of the back of the statements from that organization about the tripling in rent. Of course, looking at the oil and gas industry and looking at the patterns so far regarding where they're renting from, again, Georgetown would be the area that will benefit a lot. But since the shore bases will have workers that are going to be there, similar oil and gas workers, then you can imagine that the cost of rent might be high in those areas if those workers are going to live in those areas and pay the higher rents and drive prices up through greater demand. So those are maybe things to keep an eye on as the country grows. And in terms of Guyana's young people, there's a question as to how really you can benefit from these things, how really you can benefit from these circumstances, because it is a difficult circumstance. And as we look at what's going on, the question is, will we continue to see these rental prices go up? I'll give you an example. There's a couple of FPSOs of the oil and gas producing vessels. There's a couple of those offshore right now, but there may be, perhaps in the future, as many as 12. So if this is what it looks like when there's 2 or 3, imagine what it might look like when there's 12. Guyana's oil production currently is 3.5, 350-ish thousand barrels of oil per day. But there's an indication that Exxon wants to increase its production all the way up to 1.2 million barrels of oil a day as soon as 2027. So not even that far off. And that's almost 4 times as much oil and gas production offshore of Guyana. So does that mean that there will be 4 times as many Exxon workers? Perhaps. Of course, if you have to have people on all of these ships, these people need to live somewhere. All of these oil-producing vessels, these people will need to live somewhere. So these are things that we, I think, as a nation, have to think a lot about. And as an individual consumer, we have to think a lot about as well. Will this mean that the population of Guyana will grow a lot? Of course, we're going to see migration by oil and gas workers. But there are the industries that are connected to the oil and gas industry, and we're going to see workers come to staff those industries. You may see more workers from Trinidad. You may see more workers from other islands. You may see workers from other oil-producing countries. So that's something that we're going to have to keep in mind. We may also see more migration from nearby countries such as Venezuela, Brazil, Suriname, as the country does particularly well, because, of course, a country that's growing with a high income, a lot of people will want to take part in that economy. And, of course, that's something that we will look at to make sure that we always get the best benefit for Guyanese citizens and we push our economy forward. So these are all things that should be considered, should be taken into consideration, not just what things are now, but where things are going. What is our country going to look like down the road? If you look at the oil fields, it's estimated that for another 25 years, 30 years, we could easily see production. And a lot of estimates look at 2050 as when things might cool off. We'll see countries like India and China continue to grow, so their oil consumption may continue to grow as well. So this is, again, something that we have to think about. On the other hand, maybe oil production will fall off as electrification and so on reduces that. But here in Guyana, I think it is reasonable to say that as the industry expands, you'll see more people, you'll see more oil and gas workers, and you'll see more staff for the industries connected to the oil and gas industry. This means that these people will have to find a place to live. And so if they're looking to live in the Georgetown area, or if they're looking to live near to oil and gas activities such as shore bases, that would imply that there'll be more people looking to rent in those areas, which would send the rent up. So this is something that you might keep in mind as the country grows. Something to help you think about the process. Now, as far as young people are concerned, of course, if you can get your hand on some land, that would be useful. But also, it would seem to me that as it stands right now, living outside of Georgetown would be a much more efficient way to get a good place to rent. So maybe keep that in mind. If everyone is focusing on one area, then maybe focus on another area where you can get a better deal. Of course, on the flip side, if you have property, it'd be a great time to rent. Perhaps if you're interested in this, it's up to you, of course. You might rent out your Georgetown property and live somewhere else with a lower rent so as to offset. You, of course, would make some money from the Georgetown property and pay less for the property outside of the city, somewhere that oil and gas folks are maybe not looking. So those are the types of things that you'd have to consider as a young person. Really, it's about where do you position yourself within the structure of society, these changes, and how do you now look at way to benefit. So it would seem to me that the easiest and the most effective thing to do would be just to live outside of Georgetown in an area where you can get a more reasonable rent and commute into the city, at least until we see changes. And we may see changes, so let's keep an eye out to the way that things are structured right now. If they're extensive, if there are very extensive developments, maybe there'll be more houses available. Maybe all of that will help. Maybe all of that will help. So let's see how it goes. We'll close off this show with just a quick recap of things, which is funny. We've got one photo there we haven't quite looked at yet. We'll just throw that up for you viewers. And that's a photo that shows side by side really the per capita income of Guyana versus China, and at purchasing power parity, the per capita income of Guyana versus China. So in terms of your ability to actually purchase goods and services. And, I want viewers to notice there's been some big jumps up, big increases in Guyana's economy, that we've seen this massive growth. We've seen this massive increase in the overall size of the economy. But at the same time, things is not nice. We're not seeing on the ground in people's pockets, something that's keeping a pace with this growth. We're not seeing people's lives improve. Maybe the country will grow at 75% this year. It's possible if the oil price remains very high. Are you going to be 75% better off this year? Is your income going to be 75% better? That to me seems to be very much unlikely. So as we look at these types of pictures, as we get a perspective as to how quickly the country is growing now with a per capita GDP that is higher than China's, we have to ask ourselves, how are we benefiting from this? Are our lives getting better, not worse? And looking at the experiences of other countries where they've seen heavy investment in infrastructure, but also heavy corruption, whether that's the direction we're going. So we have to be vigilant. And I hope that tonight's given you some perspective. Of course, we've got Mr. Obiang with his great suits, his stylish vehicles, and his $120 million yacht, who's living it up, really enjoying enjoying life. Yeah, there we go. We got we got that yacht with an incredible luxury yacht, $120 million. So we're talking luxury. It's called the Ebony Ice. Viewers, if you take away one thing from tonight, you should just remember that there are corrupt, allegedly corrupt politicians around this world with yachts that they got from allegedly oil money. The Ebony Ice. There we go. Look at that, looking sharp. Stepping out of that Bentley, looking sharp again. Even as very recently, he was caught up in a scandal where over $1 million in watches and cash he had on him on a diplomatic trip. So that's all we've got for tonight, viewers. I hope you enjoyed that. There we got the cars, that yellow one really jumping out, very bright and beautiful. So I hope you've had a fun time with us tonight, viewers. Thank you for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place, 7 to 8 p.m. on the Lowdown, where you can get your Saturday night off. Start your Saturday on a high with the Lowdown and your host, Elson Low. So you guys have a good rest of the night.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.